this is Greg Deckler, and today in this video we are going to be looking at creating a dynamic temporal scale. That probably sounds kind of fancy or weird, and probably isn't the best name. If anybody's got a better name for it, let me know. But I came up with this term as kind of a short description of what we're doing here when I wrote DAX Cookbook a few years ago. In DAX Cookbook in chapter 10 included an example. In fact, it's a very similar example to this one that we'll be showing today. So a dynamic temporal scale, what it is really is it's a scale in your x-axis that changes in terms of level of granularity depending upon where you are on a time-based or date-based basis. So as you can see here in this particular example, I'm looking at the current quarter, and if it's the current quarter, it actually shows me a breakdown by week, versus if it's any previous quarter, it only shows the information by quarter. So what this allows you to do is show a granular level of detail at the most important, most current information, and then for previous dates and that it shows less granular. And this is useful in a lot of cases. I've seen this in manufacturing, for example. They want to get they want to get a long history of the information. But if we did it only by week, then it would be they'd have to scroll. This allows them, by switching to quarters after the current quarter, if it's previous to the current quarter, this allows them to display a lot more information on the screen and get the whole history of what's going on. But for the current quarter, it allows them to see exactly what's going on at a level of detail by week. So this is again, I would say it's actually included in the Uncommon DAX Patterns chapter of DAX Cookbook, but I do see it from time to time. It comes up, and so I thought I would create a video just quickly showing one method of doing it. And this method I think is probably the easiest to understand, especially for beginners. But we'll cover at least one, maybe two other options in later videos. So basically the way we implement this is through calculated columns. And as you can see here, I've got my R10 date table, and I'm just, and for this table, I'm just using the calendar function for 2016 to today, and then I'm randomly generating some inventory level. And so that's these two columns right here. So the first step is to create this IsCurrentQuarter. And there's different ways of doing this. This is one where essentially I'm grabbing the, what is today, the date, what is my current year. So using the year for today, current quarter, using the quarter function for today. And then essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, grab me the year of the current row I'm in, grab me the quarter of the current row I'm in. If the year matches the current year and the quarter matches the current quarter, return true, otherwise return false. So that's all that this does, right? So for any date in the current quarter, it's going to return true. And as we get past the current quarter, we're going to start returning false. So that's kind of the first step. The next step is to create this, what I'm going to have this called the DTS column. This is pretty simple. So all we're doing is saying if it's the current quarter, then we're going to return a value that starts with the letter W for week. We grab the week num of the current row's date, and we grab the year, and then we put it in this format here. So we end up with week 16-2022, week 15, week 14, etc. And then once we start going back past the current quarter, if it's not in the current quarter, then we're turning just the Q for quarter, then the quarter, and the year. So Q1 2022, Q2 2022 later on as we come down here, except Q4 2021, because we're counting backwards. All right, so now the last step in all of this is that we need this to sort correctly, right? So we're going to do something similar, and we're going to create this DTS Sort By column. And again, we're just checking if it's the current year. If it is, then we return a value of just the year, the quarter, and then the week number. And if it's not in the current quarter, we return just the year and the quarter. Obviously, then we would set this sort by column to be our DTS sort by column. And once you do that, then you can use the DTS column in your x-axis and then whatever value you want in your as the value, just like we've done in this visual right here. So x-axis is my DTS, my y-axis is my average of the inventory. And then the other nice thing about having that calculated column is I can use that to differentiate the colors on this column chart, for example. So I can use the IsCurrentQuarter as my legend, and now it's very obvious that, hey, there's something different about these columns than these columns, and the difference is in obviously the granularity. Now, this technique, you could extend this technique with a few additional columns to, if you wanted, let's say that you wanted to, if it's the current week, show it by day. If it's the current month, show it by week. If it's the current quarter, show it by month. And if it's, the current, past, if it's in the current year, show it by quarter. And then if it's been past years, just show it by a year, for example. So you can have a lot of different variations on how you can do this. Now, and again, we've implemented this via columns. So if we added additional columns, you need a few additional columns to get different levels of granularity, like to the day, to the month, week, and year. But all possible, using the similar technique, just a little extra DAX code, and probably we would replace this if with a switch statement, right? Because otherwise we're going to get into nested ifs, and nobody likes those. So hope this has been valuable. Obviously, a downside to implementing as quarters is that you're going to, as calculated columns, is that you're adding data into your data model, right? Especially if this is like a fact table or something like that. Although you can implement this on a date table, would be probably the smart place to put this in. But when you're doing that, right, you are adding data in all the ills that people claim come with calculated columns, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't. But you're not. It's not the end of the world, right? You're not adding. There's not a high level of cardinality with these additional columns that we have here. This only has just one or two values. This is only going to have a few values. Going back, it's not like we were adding thousands of unique items with these different columns that we have, right? There's only, even going back 4 years, we're only adding maybe a couple dozen column values here. So not high cardinality, shouldn't have a huge impact on your data model size or anything like that. It's probably the most straightforward way to implement this dynamic temporal scale. Again, hope this has been valuable, and I'll see you guys on the next one, where I implement the same thing but in a slightly different way, I'll use a disconnected table and a slicer and a measure. So see you guys next time.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Enterprise DNA TV. If you enjoyed the content covered in this particular tutorial, please throw the video a like. It really helps us and we really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Enterprise DNA TV channel. We have a huge amount of content coming out all the time from myself and a range of content creators, all dedicated to improving the way that you use Power BI and the Power Platform. Lastly, check out Enterprise DNA's website. Plenty of resources and further learning that you can access very easily. All the best. Take care.